Welcome to the analysis of What Remains of Edith Finch. This is for course CTIN190 by Skylar Deng. The three key terms for my argument are narrative, rule, and visuality. The fragmented narrative design, rule-bound minigame structures, and stylized visuality in What Remains of Edith Finch transform the storytelling into a reflection about the special moment, education of death, and inheritance. First, I will give some basic introduction to this game. What Remains of Edith Finch is a first-person exploration video game developed by Giant Sparrow and published by Annapurna Interactive. The game was released in 2017. The story is about the 17-year-old Edith Finch returns to her ancestral home for the first time in 7 years to explore and uncover the deaths of her family members and their inherited curse. The game explores the themes of free will, fate, memory, and death, and exposes how narrative and play intertwine to confront the inevitability of death and human desire to find meaning in tragedy. The first key term I'm gonna talk about is narrative. The definition of a narrative in games is that narrative encompasses the overarching story and the player's interactive experience with it, including elements such as plot, characters, dialogue, and objective, as well as how gameplay mechanics contribute to players' purpose, motivation, and immersion. It goes beyond a simple storyline and unfolds by integrating the player's action and choices. In the game What Remains of Edith Finch, the narrative unfolds through the player's first-person exploration of the Finch family home from Edith Finch's perspective. By entering sealed rooms through hidden doors, the player discovers diaries and records left behind by deceased family members, which leads into distinct memory fragments and new gameplay sequence that recreate each character's death. Meanwhile, Edith's narration and appearance of on-screen text serve to guide and interpret the narrative. For example, at the very beginning of the game, the player enters Molly's room, reads her diary, and is passively drawn into a magical realistic sequence in which they transform into different animals to hunt and feed, which unfolding Molly's death of food poisoning. Through the combination of environment design, gameplay mechanics, and Molly's own voice-over, the player gradually unfolds her story. The second key term is rule. The definition of rule, according to our reading material How to Play Video Games, chapter Tetris Rules, the author Noor mentions that a game is a voluntary activity that unfolds within set boundaries of space and time. Rules not only confine games to specific spaces and times, but they also determine the courses and the characters of the game. In this game, rules and mechanics are inseparable. Each story segment features its own specific setting, character, plot, and gameplay mechanic. For every family member story, the game designs a unique set of rules that create entirely different mechanics and interactive experiences. For example, in Georgie's story, the player controls a toy frog that jumps across a bathtub, while in Gauss's story, the player manipulates a kite to pieces together fragmented text floating in the wind. Each story presents a distinct set of game rules that generate unique mechanics, allowing players to immerse themselves more deeply in the experience of each family member's death. The last key term is visuality. The definition of visuality is that the overall aesthetic and visual style, which encompasses all on-screen elements and the visual language used to communicate gameplay and story. In this game, the overall visual design of the game is characterized by stylized 3D rendering. The tone of environments is both mysterious and slightly eerie, yet also warm and intimate. The game would include settings such as the Finch family house, the surrounding ocean and beach, the family graveyard, and a variety of distinct visual experiences within each memory vignette. For example, Barbara's story takes the form of a Halloween-themed comic book in which she is protagonist. Players experience a striking shift from a 3-dimensional to a 2-dimensional space, immersing themselves in the stylized comic aesthetics and heighten both tension and playfulness. Also, Louis' story moves from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional visuals, from black and white to vivid color, and from a third-person to a first-person perspective. Through montage-like transition between multiple scenes, this sequence powerfully and immersively conveys Louis' daydream-like state and psychological descent. Here is a diagram that shows the relationship between narrative rule and visuality. The interplay of these three key terms transformed What Remains of Edith Finch into an embodied memorial practice. Each mode reinforced the other to make the player feel the act of remembrance, narratively through family stories, mechanically through predetermined rules, and visually through shifting perspective and tones. So here is my central argument analysis. In this game, narrative, rule, and visuality intertwine to create deeply immersive and emotionally distinct experiences for each family member's story. Through these stories, players come to understand death not as a very heavy or tragic event, but as something to be acknowledged, even celebrated, a form of remembrance and release. To me, this game feels like an education about death. We often avoid the topic because it feels so solemn and unbearable. But here, death is portrayed through imaginative and unexpected forms. Flying, exploring underwater worlds, transforming into animals, or flying a kite. Some deaths even carry a sense of childlike playfulness, light-hearted and almost fairy tale-like, allowing players to approach death with calmness and acceptance. At the same time, the family's death curse suggests a sense of fatalism. From birth, each family member seems destined to die, as if trapped in an inherited psychological loop. However, I also believe they inherit the family's creativity and imagination, which is a spiritual legacy that transforms fear into storytelling. This makes me realize that we all inherit something invisible from our families, no matter the place we grow up or the people who raised us. The last but not least, the family members died in their very important moments. For example, Calvin fulfilled his dream of flying. Barbara found back her screaming voice. Lewis was crowned as a king, and Sam hunted down a great deer. But death is the ultimate destination for all humanity, and every life is a miracle. Our memories, especially those small yet meaningful moments, shape who we are. People come and go, things begin and end, but the memories we keep remind us that they once existed. And that is how we carry life forward. Thank you for watching my presentation.